My dad grew up in Butte, Montana. He was drafted, or I don't know, enlisted, or somehow pressed into the army after the Japanese invaded Pearl Harbor, because he worked at the drugstore in Butte, Montana. They decided, well, they first asked him if he would be willing to be a doctor, because if you worked at the drugstore, of course, that predisposes you to know a lot more about medicine. And actually, he was quite honest with the Army. He said, well, actually, I mostly get D's in science, so it's probably not a good idea. They offered him a full scholarship to Stanford Medical School. He said, well, that's cool, but still, honestly, I don't think that'll work. So they made him a medic. He came in at Omaha Beach, Normandy. The story he told the most was getting ready for the invasion and how the Scottish commander was getting them ready to load the boats that would come in at Normandy. And the Scottish commander would say, "We're about to board the boot. We're about to board the boot. We're about to board the boot." My dad actually had come across the ocean and was loading the boats with his best friend Walter from Butte, Montana. They were right there together, coming across the English Channel in the cold little boats. And standing next to each other as the gangplank, or whatever it's called, lowers down and it's, "Hit it, you guys, we're running ashore right now while those Germans are shooting the machine guns at us." My father ran as fast as he could. It's hard to do when you're running through water quite deep. My dad looked over and Walter was down. Blood was all over. My dad kept running. He was a medic. He pulled Walter ashore and closed his eyes and said goodbye and kept running, pulling bodies, closing eyes of all the dead that were going down. It was pretty bloody. My dad hardly ever talked about it. Hardly ever. He only told us the funny stories. The funniest story was they actually walked from Normandy, the north of France, to Marseille. It was the invasion of Normandy, and the Americans were pushing the Germans out, blah, blah, blah. But he said when they'd get into a town, they'd, of course, go to the bar, and the French would get up and they would sing Le Marseillaise, the national anthem. Roll out, no, they would sing Le Marseillaise, do, 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 do. The American boys would get up and lift their beer mugs and sing Roll Out the beer barrel polka. Roll out the barrel, we'll have a barrel of fun. The French thought that was our national anthem. So that's what the American boys would always sing. My dad, actually, the thing he really taught, my dad, if you were emotional, which I always was, or worried about something, he would just say, just don't worry about it. I think, I totally don't get how to do that. But he actually learned it probably in that long walk from Normandy to Marseille, because they were shooting all the time and people are going down and he's tying tourniquets and, as he calls it, closing eyes of the dead. And he wasn't too freaked out about everything. The way he dealt with everything was, he would say, "Hey, you guys, we are going to have a crap game tonight, and we'll have a really good time. and they did every night, throwing the dice. And my dad was also an introvert, so he would just go inside. His tent mate had to come home. He went kind of stark raving nuts because he was an extrovert, and all his attention was what was going on around him. My dad had the ability to go inside. Believe me, I will never knock an introvert's ability to do that. So funniest part also is, so the long walk from the north of France to the south of France, they get to Marseille, and VE Day victory is declared. You know, after that long walk and all the blood and guts, they were pretty happy. And so my dad and his buddies asked the commander if they could provide some beer or wine to celebrate. And do you know what the commander said? The commander said, no. No, we won't provide beer or wine after all the blood and guts you guys experienced. My dad didn't say anything to the commander, but he and his buddies went and hijacked a wine train. I mean, they were in the south of France. What else are you going to do, you know? So they hijacked the wine train and provided it to all the troops. And my dad was not court-martialed, but he was pulled before the commander. And the commander said, well, we are going to have to strip you of all your rank. God knows what that was. And my dad said, I don't care, because I'm never, ever gonna fight in another goddamn war for you. Ever. Ever. Take my rank. When he got on the Queen Mary coming home, the big troop ship, he still doesn't like getting on big ships. You know how it goes. You sort of post-traumatic stress and all. He threw the pack he'd had to carry the whole length of France over the side, but he kept the dice. And they played crap games the whole trip home. For a long time, he did not want to go camping either, because then he'd have to sleep on the ground, and he'd done a whole lot of sleeping on the ground. But my mom's pretty rockin', my dad's pretty rockin', and you know what's cool? I bet there's a lot of other great stories and great people in the world. So later, we're going to arrange a way that you too can contribute the stories to this, because it's the stories that guide us through all our lives and the wildest times.
When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah, we'll give him a heart